Welcome to Independently Speaking, the podcast from the Independent Schools Association. ISA represents head teachers leading independent schools across the UK, each one unique. From small community schools to specialist institutions focused on performing arts, outdoor education, faith, sport, or special educational needs. ISA members reflect the remarkable diversity of independent education. Join us as we hear from school leaders navigating the challenges and opportunities shaping their schools and the wider sector. And now, here is your host, ISA Director of Education and Inclusion, Helen Stanton-Tonner.
Welcome to the ISA podcast, Independently Speaking. I am your host, Helen Stanton-Tonner, the Director of Education and Inclusion for ISA. In this episode, we're continuing our exploration of leadership in independent education, focusing on purpose-driven leadership, inclusive school culture, and the role of innovation in developing people as well as pupils. Joining me today is Francesca Ellsmoor, the Executive Head Teacher of Auckland College Independent School in Liverpool. Francesca is a values-led leader with a strong reputation for inclusive practice, community-focused education, and forward-thinking approaches to staff development and leadership. Francesca's work at Auckland College, particularly her emphasis on belonging, innovation, and people-centred leadership, offers a powerful lens through which we can explore what leadership looks like in a modern independent school. Francesca, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi Helen, thank you so much for having me today.
Now, before we start talking about your leadership journey, could you give us a little bit of a background to Auckland College and its founders?
Yes, of course. Auckland College was founded in 1999 by our proprietors Anthony and Gillian Akaronya at our current site in Egbert in Liverpool. And their vision, values and exceptional professional experience continue to shape the ethos and direction of the school today. Mrs. Gillian Akaronya was a highly respected teacher with many years of experience in mainstream education, while Mr. Anthony Akaronya brought over 25 years of senior leadership in children and family services, including his role as head of children's services across the Liverpool City region. And together they share a deep commitment to improving outcomes for children and young people. And the Auckland College journey began earlier in 1991 with the establishment of Parkview Tuition Centre. Its rapid success confirmed the strength of their educational philosophy and inspired them to develop the concept further. Now, Mrs. Akaronya made the bold decision to leave her full-time teaching post and relocate the centre to the Welsh Chapel in Allerton. With the very strong support of the local community, the centre soon provided after-school and weekend tuition to as many as 700 children each week. And it was during this formative period that the name Auckland College emerged, suggested in 1995 by one of the pupils, reflecting the chapel's location on Auckland Road. This early example of valuing pupil voice remains a defining feature of the school. And by 1996, Auckland College was formally established and registered with Ofsted. In 1999, it moved to its present site in Egbert. The building, formerly a nursing home, underwent extensive renovation before opening its doors in September 1999 to 120 full-time pupils.
So it's a lovely historical setting that we have here in terms of ethos and foundation. And you've been leading this school. But could you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey? Sort of what experiences or influences most shaped your understanding of what leadership is as you progressed into these senior roles?
Yes, of course. Early on, I was influenced just as much by the leaders who inspired me as by those who showed me what not to do. And working across diverse school contexts really taught me that leadership is not about authority, it's about responsibility. And the most powerful lesson has really been seeing how cultures shape outcomes, not just academically, but emotionally and socially for both children and adults as well.
And you often speak, don't you, about leadership in terms of purpose and values. How would you describe your leadership philosophy and how has it evolved since becoming executive head teacher here?
Yeah, my leadership, I would say, is values-led. It's purpose-driven. Earlier in my career, I thought very much that leadership meant having all of the answers. And now I see it very much as creating the conditions in which others can thrive, contribute and grow. And that includes encouraging pupils to aim high whilst showing respect for all. I would say over time, my leadership has become more relational, definitely more reflective and more deeply rooted in belonging.
You're absolutely right, though, aren't you, where you're speaking about what we might perceive ahead is you mentioned they're having all the answers, and that's quite a common perception, isn't it, that people have of the heads who run their schools. But was there a particular moment when you realised that headships or the shaping of the school culture at a whole school level was the right path for you?
I would say it wasn't a single moment. But a growing realisation that I care deeply about whole school culture, how people feel, how decisions are made, and especially whose voices are heard. I wanted to lead a community that was fully inclusive, non-selective, where children are known as individuals and diversity is genuinely celebrated. And for me, headship felt like the right platform in which to shape that kind of environment.
And you've mentioned there's some quite strong personal values. How do these show up in your day-to-day leadership decisions?
I would say it's how I listen, how I make decisions, how I treat people when things are difficult. I always try my very best to lead with kindness, with fairness, integrity, especially under pressure, because that's when our values matter most, and that's definitely when trust is built.
And you've already sort of mentioned about a leadership assumption of, thinking you have to have all the answers. But are there any other leadership assumptions you held earlier in your career before you took on a headship that have changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say strong leadership means being directive, or strong leadership means you're always confident. And I think I've learned that uncertainty, humility, asking for help and collaboration are not weaknesses. They are essential to authentic and sustainable leadership.
And you've already sort of mentioned, as you described the school to us and our listeners, that Auckland College places a strong emphasis on inclusion and belonging and knowing every child really well. How does that ethos shape the way you lead adults as well as pupils?
Yeah, well, I think, Helen, it's the same principles apply. People need to feel known, they need to feel safe and valued. And for me, inclusion is not age specific. At Auckland College, we are ambitious for every one of our pupils, and we're small enough to ensure that the talents of each individual are nurtured and are valued. We're proud to welcome pupils from all over the world and to be fully inclusive all through school, where no child is unknown.
That's a lovely description, because you're talking about how the school sort of works in practice. But if we delve a little bit deeper and talk about the inclusive leadership, what does that look like in practice beyond policy, just the daily life of the school and your interactions with it?
Yeah, I mean, it shows up in everyday interactions. Whose voices are invited into the room, how feedback is given, how mistakes are handled, and whether difference is genuinely respected rather than just simply tolerated. In a small school like Auckland, culture is highly visible, and inclusive leadership, it has to be lived consistently by everyone.
And it's that inclusion of the whole community, isn't it? And quite often a lot of that is put on the staff as they sort of like demonstrate to the pupils. But how do you ensure that the staff themselves are seen and supported and valued in a community like Auckland College?
Yeah, and that's so important. I would say by being present, by listening intentionally, recognising that people are human first and professional second. In a close-knit community, relationships matter enormously. And for me, it's that small acts of kindness, acts of recognition, and a genuine interest that make a significant difference to not just morale, but well-being and staff performance.
And I agree that sort of genuine interest is such a vital part of that, isn't it? And what about trust? What does that play in creating an inclusive culture? And how do you actively build on that with your staff, your pupils and your families?
Yes, I mean, trust is foundational. I would say I build it through consistency, transparency, follow through, definitely, saying what I mean and doing what I say, even when perhaps that is uncomfortable.
And what about high expectations? Because everybody knows, the parents will have high expectations of the school. They will want their children to do well. So how would you balance those high expectations with that level of compassion and understanding, particularly in such a diverse school community?
Yeah, we believe in the pursuit of academic success, of course we do, but never at the expense of an all-round broad education. Holding high expectations, showing compassion, these are not opposing forces, they reinforce one another. A happy school for me is a successful school, and we all know that children thrive when they feel safe, when they feel supported, and when they feel challenged.
And Francesca, you're not afraid to step into the world of innovation, and innovation is often discussed in relation to curriculum and technology, but less so in how we might develop and support our staff. How would you define innovation in leadership?
I would say innovation in leadership is thoughtful improvement and not change for its own sake, but doing things better, more humanely, more sustainably, really in response to real needs of pupils, of families and of staff.
And you've been developing a new approach, haven't you, for tracking staff progress and professional growth. Can you tell us and our listeners about the thinking behind this and what problem you were trying to solve?
Yes, I mean, from my experience, traditional performance models often felt very transactional, very limiting. And in a small school community, development, it has to feel personal, it has to be meaningful. And I wanted a system that reflected the growth, the aspiration, the professional identity of every member of staff, rather than simply measuring outcomes.
And how does your approach move beyond traditional performance management models?
It has to be developmental rather than judgmental. I think performance management has to really focus on that continuous dialogue, that reflection and progress over time, rather than simply one-off targets or a compliance-driven process.
And have you seen the impact that it's had on the staff confidence or their development or even their leadership capacity so far?
Absolutely, I would say staff confidence has grown. Those professional conversations are richer and more people are confident stepping into leadership with greater clarity and purpose. For me, when people feel supported, they're far more willing to lead.
And what have you actually done to ensure that tracking this progress supports their growth and well-being rather than creating sort of the pressure of compliance?
Yeah, I think it's really important to avoid that pressure, and by co-constructing the process together and keeping it flexible, ensuring well-being sits alongside ambition for every member of staff really means that growth feels empowering, it feels supportive, it doesn't feel burdensome on that member of staff.
And if any of our listeners are school leaders who want to innovate or improve their staff development programme, what advice would you give them on where to start?
I would say definitely start by listening. Listen to staff. Identify through talking to all of your staff what's not serving them well. Involve the staff actively in shaping those solutions. Definitely pilot it thoughtfully rather than just simply aiming for perfection from the outset.
And one of the things about being an independent school is we often don't have the freedom to really invest deeply in our people. How do you use independence to grow your leadership capacity at all levels here?
Yeah, I think independence really gives us here at Auckland the freedom to personalise that development, to invest in coaching, invest in our people, to take considered risk with emerging leaders. it brings responsibility to develop strong senior and middle leaders and really ensure that that strategy always translates into the classroom practice, the classroom impact.
You're absolutely right, isn't it? Because you want that development to filter down, don't you, into the classroom. And that's sort of one element, isn't it, of effective leadership, being able to see that. So what else does effective leadership look like to you in your senior and middle leader teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different things there. Certainly clarity, empathy. There has to be accountability and there has to be collaboration. For me, strong leaders that know themselves well, strong leaders that remain reflective and create space for others to succeed, whilst really keeping the teaching, the learning, and the pastoral care at the heart of leadership is so important.
And what about the importance of modelling vulnerability, reflection, and learning as a leader? Where does that play a part?
Oh, it's essential. When we model reflection, when we model learning and openness, really it gives others the permission to do the same. It definitely builds trust and it strengthens those relationships.
And how do you identify and nurture those sort of future leaders, including those who might not see themselves as a traditional leader? What do you do to move them forward?
I think you've got to pinpoint, you've got to notice potential early. Offer encouragement, create opportunities without labels. In a small school community, leadership potential, I feel, is much easier to spot, and it's definitely easier to nurture as well.
And is there a role for coaching and professional dialogue in your leadership approach?
Absolutely. Coaching creates that thinking space. It helps people to clarify values, to navigate complexity, and really grow with confidence rather than fear. And I think that's really vital in such a changing educational landscape.
And you're absolutely right. It is a complex and changing landscape at the moment within our independent sector. What do you see as the biggest leadership challenges facing schools at the moment?
Well, I mean, each generation of educators faces a defining challenge, and adolescent mental health is undoubtedly ours. The fast pace of life, societal expectations, the pressures perpetuated through social media mean that young people cannot navigate adolescence alone. And I personally feel the most important role of any school is to guarantee every child has a safe place in which to thrive.
And you're right, there is a lot of uncertainty, isn't there? And how as the leader do you maintain that sort of clarity of purpose and optimism during periods of uncertainty and rapid change as a kind of like in a response to that for your community?
Optimism is essential. You've got to stay grounded in your purpose, focus on what we can control, which is obviously relationships, it's values, it's the daily lived experience of every child and every member of staff. I would say optimism grows from connection, not necessarily certainty.
And it's those connections and relationships that really build good foundations, isn't it? And what do you think sort of the families value most about independent schools today? And how should leaders be responding to that?
Yeah, I mean, families, I feel that they really value the belonging, certainly the trust, the consistency of care. Families want to know that their child is known, is safe, is supported. And here at Auckland, they're supported all year round. Our 51-week wraparound childcare provision is a really important part of that. We're serving the needs of our local community, and we're supporting working parents with continuity and stability.
And looking ahead, obviously, times are changing. What leadership qualities do you think will be the most important for the next generation of school leaders?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Times are definitely changing. Leadership qualities, I would say, are emotional intelligence, absolutely resilience and adaptability, retaining that ethical courage and the ability to lead collaboratively rather than hierarchically. Human leadership, for me, is resilient leadership.
Now, Francesca, you have a wealth of experience sort of under your belt already. So for those who maybe don't have that, how could they know that their leadership has made a meaningful difference?
Yeah, I think I know my leadership's made a difference when the people feel proud of the culture that they belong to, when the staff and the middle leaders and the senior leaders feel confident to lead with integrity, and definitely when the impact continues long after my direct involvement.
Always within education, we have educational leaders who are ones we look to for inspiration. But outside of education, are there any leaders or organisations that have inspired your thinking about leadership and innovation?
Absolutely. I think there's lots of different leaders, lots of different organisations that have inspired me. Those that have are values-led organisations that ultimately prioritise people, prioritise purpose, leaders who lead quietly but profoundly, creating that lasting impact through care and through consistency.
And finally, as we draw our conversation to a close, what has sustained your belief in independent education, and what really keeps you motivated as a leader day on day?
Yeah, my belief in independent education really is sustained by the freedom that it gives schools to place children truly at the centre of everything that they do. I really do believe that independence enables us to deliver a genuinely personalised education shaped around the needs, the talents and the aspirations of every child. It really allows us to innovate with confidence, to be fully inclusive and really educate the whole child rather than simply measure outcomes. Here at Auckland, what began as Anthony and Gillian Akaronya's vision really does remain at the heart of Auckland College today. We're really proud to carry this legacy forward, ensuring that the school continues to grow and evolve, but while supporting every pupil to develop confidence, curiosity and that ambition. I think above all, Auckland and here, the education shapes character as well as intellect. We want all of our pupils to develop strong morals and values, to be ambitious and respectful and compassionate. And here at Auckland, every pupil will always matter, and every moment of learning will always count.
And as one just final question, if you were going to give one piece of advice for those who are embarking out on their leadership journey for the first time, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say remain values driven, ensure that the community that you build is one in which outstanding pastoral care really lies at the heart. Build a purposeful and supportive community, and one in which pupils and staff learn to navigate all of the challenges of the 21st century together. A community in a school that really forms enriching life experiences and lasting friendships.
Francesca, you've shared powerful insights into leadership grounded in inclusion, innovation and humanity. And I know many of our listeners will reflect on your experiences as they consider their own leadership journeys. Thank you so much for such an open and thoughtful conversation.
Thank you, Helen.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe and share it with colleagues. Join us next time as we continue exploring leadership, innovation and inclusion across the independent sector. Until then, stay curious, stay connected.
You've been listening to Independently Speaking, the podcast of the Independent Schools Association. For more information about ISA and the schools we support, please visit isaschools.org.uk.